Welcome to the Back in Control radio show with Dr. David Hanscom, MD. Dr. Hanscom believes that each human being has a deep drive to thrive and give back. This force is frequently compromised by chronic pain, which has been documented to have a similar impact on your quality of life as terminal cancer. Life becomes one of survival. Through his own personal ordeal, he discovered that chronic pain is curable by systematically using established medical practices in a self-directed manner. The key is connecting to your own healing capacity. For more information and to listen to past editions of the Back in Control radio show with Dr. David Hanscom, visit www.backincontrolradiotv.com. That's www.backincontrolradiotv.com. And now, here's the host of the Back in Control radio show, Dr. David Hanscom, MD.
I am your host, Dr. David Hanscom. On today's show, we will be hearing a story of solving relentless anxiety and pain by connecting to her own capacity to heal. So I'm delighted to have Dori Scherer on my show. She's a daughter of a friend of ours. She is an artist, writer, grad student, as well as a spiritual guide of sorts. She's currently living in the foothills of Pasadena, California. They are working on developing a school of art, and she's founded a contemporary art gallery in 2016 called Specialist. They have several group and solo exhibitions and have curated shows as well. Dori has also taught art to children and adults alike. They offer one-on-one tarot and astrology readings, lead group meditations, and host a monthly community new moon ceremony. We speak on social and spiritual concepts, encouraging a more spiritual path for all. So Dori's story is one of the more inspiring stories that I've heard, and we'll get to as much as we can today. So Dori, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Did I miss anything there that was important?
Not that I know of. I mean, I've had a winding path for sure. Right. I also worked in the film industry for several years. And yeah, that's about it. And I'm in grad school.
Yeah. So I think Dori's a bit of a superstar. She doesn't really know that, but she has so many different talents. It's unbelievable. And she's good. She's really good at this stuff. So, I just want to remind the audience why we have this program in the first place. And with chronic pain, and Dori and I are going to talk about this a little bit later today, is that we have found out that the mental pain that we call anxiety is actually a bigger problem than physical pain, which also causes anxiety. But the problem with the mental pain, you can't escape it. And then often, she spent many years in chronic pain, and she was told you have to live with it, manage it. You try different treatments. You are offered hope, then it gets dashed over and over and over again. And she lost hope. So there's research. Dr. Dancer out of Austin, Texas, has research that demonstrates that hope is one of the 4 critical factors in healing. So the reason we have this show is that only about 20% of physicians are comfortable treating chronic pain, and it's always to be managed, not cured. And there's a small group of us in the country who have watched patient after patient go to pain-free. And when I say pain-free, Dori's going to explain this, pain doesn't run your life anymore. So that's the general reason why we have this show. And Dori, this first 15-minute segment, we're going to talk about how what it's like to be in pain when it started. I know you had mental and physical pain both, but just what was it like being in that hole for so long?
Oh, wow. Yeah, well, I am now 34 years old, and the pain started when I believe I was 16. I got in a rowing accident. I was on the crew team, and it just kind of took off from there. I remember not feeling like I could participate. I couldn't participate in the physical activities that other high school students were participating in. And I just really felt like my life quality was compromised in a really big way. And I, worked with lots of doctors and physical therapists and tried to sort it out. And it never really went away, and it lasted through my 20s into my 30s as well. Lots of big dips with different car accidents, really overusing my body, working in the film industry, ski accident. And yeah, it just really kind of has definitely taken years, years from my well-being in a way. And that was, or at least that was kind of how I was framing it, excuse me, in my mind, was that it was taking something away from me. And I was so mad at the pain and I wanted to go away. And I was mad at my body, for not providing me with, ease. I had definitely had crippling anxiety along with that, from a young age, and just had a lot of kind of social anxiety and really, shyness and caring what everyone thought all the time and trying to fit in and all that kind of stuff that anxiety sometimes brings up. I could go on and on and on probably about the anxiety, but it's hard to almost tap into it and remember how bad it has been. I have been immobilized at times, completely immobilized. I've been in majorly acute pain. I have skirted surgery multiple times. Many doctors have told me that I required surgery.
What kind of surgeries? I didn't know that.
Yeah, like gosh, I don't even remember what they're calling it, because I had a couple ruptured discs.
Okay.
So this is low. And so it's low back pain, and oftentimes goes down my leg, or it has at different times gone down my leg as well. The most recent occurrence before I started working with you was, it was fully down my entire leg, like really bad nerve pain all the way down to my foot, and really extreme MRIs and all that.
But I think you mentioned before that between the physical pain, which was not great, and the mental pain in the form of the anxiety, that the anxiety was pretty disabling.
Yeah, it was.
And
yeah.
How bad did it get? How bad did the anxiety get?
I mean, I think it really, hindered my social life and just like pursuing things I was interested in pursuing. Just like kind of like anxiety, just it feels like fear. So, and just being really hard on myself too, that kind of thing.
Right.
Critical mind.
Right.
Worrying all the time and not just being and living.
Right. I mean, to me, when you're in your 20s, in a way, you lost your 20s in a way, right?
Yeah, and I was working the whole time too.
What kind of work?
I was working in the film industry, like working my way up kind of to be an art director, and did end up being an art director. I was an art director and production designer. Worked my way up into the Art Directors Guild, and then decided I did not want to be a union art director after all, but put a lot of effort into that in my 20s. So yeah, I guess in a way I was definitely maybe a little bit of a workaholic in my 20s as a way to kind of, I don't know. I feel like that's somehow related to the anxiety, and I'm not sure how to make that connection right now, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you met Dori, by the way, you would be shocked, because you would think she's the last person in the world that would have anxiety. She shouldn't have anxiety. She's very competent. She's personable. She's easy to be around. And it's always fascinating how people, I think most of us look like we don't have anxiety, but a lot of people have crippling anxiety, but it doesn't show up. And Dori would be the last person in the world that you think should have anxiety. So I find that really interesting, because I've known you for a long time, and I never ever would have guessed that you had anxiety issues.
Yeah, I remember people saying that all the time. Even when I was young, like, you're so chill, you have such a great disposition, and I'd be like, you have no idea what's going on inside my brain.
Right. So the people would tell you that?
Yeah.
No, I agree. As I get into the audience, she looks so chill, relaxed, has it together. I mean, you do have it together. It may not feel like it, but it's just fascinating how people just can't pick up on this stuff. And particularly, I'll just rant for a second about medicine. In medicine, we're busy, we move quickly, and I know you have lots of physical pain, but probably really not many physicians ask you about your anxiety. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, that is a fair statement. I don't
And
think one made that connection.
so I want to spend the next 3 or 4 minutes here just sort of trying to, I mean, I won't belabor this too much. I mean, you're bounced around, you basically lose hope. What started to make the change? At some point, you'd done a lot of work, and I always think it's an additive process of things coming around. But what was the basic paradigm shift that caused you to start to solve the problem? And we'll talk about the tools in the second episode. But what allowed you to switch? What seemed to start to make the difference?
Yeah, well, I had a really bad, a low pain episode, and I was 32, and it just completely took me out. It completely took me out, and I was on my way to grad school, and I was just like, I can't live like this anymore. So I think that it just got so bad that I was willing to really commit to my healing in a way that I just didn't have that capacity or drive to do that before, because it would kind of go in and out and I would kind of get by. But it was just such a low that I just kind of made the decision to try anything. And it's actually when I called you and asked you to fix me. And you said, it's not about being fixed, it's about letting go. And my dialogue with you has really been helpful, just kind of understanding these concepts of letting go and I think the big shift was not, there wasn't one big thing that I was doing to change it, but I tried a little bit of everything and just what was working for me. I did meditation. I was seeing therapists. I saw a somatic therapist who was very helpful, Kendra, who you introduced me to.
Right.
My spiritual practice, my writing practice, and just kind of committed to that letting go process that you had told me from the very beginning, of not really attaching so much meaning to the pain. Like it no longer meant as much. And I just became aware of all of my patterns of thinking about it, because I attached so much meaning and anxiety to waking up with pain. And I became aware of my own thinking patterns in the expressive writing, and then they stopped holding so much weight.
Right. So Dori, thanks for this first segment. I just want to review for a second. She's 34. We've been working together for a couple of years, and I would tell you, when she first met me, she was not all that open to these ideas. About 2 months later, she called me, and I was surprised. And it's just been a delight working with her. But she's been in pain and anxiety for over 20 years. She is now thriving. She's starting a new life in Los Angeles. And in the next segment, we're going to discuss some of the actual things that she does to keep herself going and to thrive. In the last half of the episode, we're going to actually talk about how well she's thriving. So we're really excited about your story, Dori, and it's really inspiring. And I wish we were actually on TV right now so people could see you in person and they would just be very inspired by the whole story, your demeanor, what's going on. She is thriving, so I'm delighted. So thank you, Dori, for this segment. And Dori's just started to set up her teaching art in her website. It's not currently a work in progress. She's in the Los Angeles area. You can visit my website, backincontrol.com, and we'll continue our discussion on connecting to your own capacity to heal here on the Back in Control radio show with yours truly, Dr. David Hanscom, on the X Zone Broadcast Network at www.xzbn.net. So hope is really critical, and put yourself in control. Welcome back in Control Radio Show on the X Zone Broadcast Network. And I'm your host, Dr. David Hanscom. In this edition of the Back in Control Radio Show, we're discussing moving through anxiety and pain by connecting to your own capacity to heal. And our guest today is Dori Scherer, who is a 34-year-old girl, a woman. I've known her for 20 years. But she just has a remarkable, inspirational story of really suffering a lot. And from my perspective as a physician, to me, it's such a tragedy to see so many people in her generation be so anxious, frustrated. The incidence of chronic pain, by the way, in teenagers and people in their 20s has gone up over 800% in the last 10 years. 800%. I gave a lecture at Garfield High School, Dori, by the way, and 300 out of the 1,500 students had chronic pain on medications every day. So it was unbelievable. So Dori is out of the hole, like we call it the abyss. And what I'm going to ask her in this segment to discuss is the actual tools she used. And I just want to reiterate that you cannot do this with mind over matter, because the unconscious brain, of which chronic pain is a part of, processes about 20 million bits of information per second. The conscious brain processes about 40. So Dori is in a situation that most people never come out of. Right now, the medical profession does not have the correct paradigm. People end up in chronic pain for a long time. They never come out. They spend an entire lifetime in chronic pain. So Dori made it out, and it really is her own capacity to heal. So Dori, I'm just curious, some of the early tools that you started to work with that seem to break through the cycle, and what you're, and just sort of some of the progression, some of those tools.
Yeah. I also just wanted to note that people always said I was too young to be in pain, and I definitely feel for all the young people who just are in chronic pain right now, and people of all ages. Anyways, yeah. So I did not think that I would ever get out. Also, definitely the expressive writing from the beginning was huge, as well as sleep. I would say actually, sleep might even be number one for me. Making sure I'm getting a good night's sleep, and that it's like there's sleep hygiene, just basic sleep hygiene stuff, like same time every night, getting enough. That was huge for me. And I just, treated that with utmost importance, and that was really helpful, because I think I just needed to also rest in whatever way. I really needed that sleep. And expressive writing was huge. So expressive writing happens sometimes in the morning, just stream of consciousness writing. Sometimes I would do it how you talk about it in your book, where I would like write stuff out and then tear it up. Sometimes I would just write it, just write, or journal, or be more creative about it. I actually make a lot of artwork that is text based. So I just wrote, and definitely that tearing up thing was really fun at the beginning, and I feel like it really did it was this physical action to take, to kind of be like, I'm not attached to my thoughts. I really liked that concept, and that worked for me. And also it was through writing and that like stream of consciousness writing that I was able to see my thoughts. And I was like, oh gosh, like I can't believe I'm thinking these things every day. Like it just started to change through that awareness. I didn't necessarily do anything, but it started to change because I became aware of the incessant thinking, which was, a lot of it was really negative. So that was huge for me. And also, I have a daily meditation practice. That's really important. I do that. Actually, that's the first thing that I do, which helps a lot with, awareness, obviously, like mindful awareness, body awareness. And yeah,
Dori,
oh yeah.
Dori,
Sorry.
explain to the audience exactly what expressive writing is.
Sure. Expressive writing is stream of consciousness writing that can happen at any time in the day. And, you just write out anything that you're feeling or thinking. It doesn't have to be full sentences. It doesn't have to even mean anything. I sometimes just like scribble and draw with it. And in your book, you talk about tearing it up, like ripping. It's pen to paper, by the way, and then ripping it up and throwing it away.
Yeah, I mean,
that's expressive writing. It's really magic. It's magic. It's magic.
Yeah, it is magic. It's crazy, isn't it? I mean, it's fascinating how such a simple exercise can make such a difference.
It is, yeah, it really is. I was blown away at the beginning by that. And that was really, I think that was the beginning of the big shift for me. Getting that sleep and then doing the expressive writing, because without the expressive writing, I wasn't even aware of what was going on in my mind.
Right. By the way, to the audience, there's over 1,000 research papers that document that expressive writing is effective. There's different forms of it, different types of it. We don't know why it works. We just know that it works. Then I think you all know in my journey that after 15 years of chronic pain, which was extreme, within 2 weeks after I started the expressive writing, things started to shift. And I thought it was the book I was reading. It turned out to be the writing. And so for some reason, the most renowned psychologist in the world noted that the only thing you can do with these obsessive thought patterns is write them down. All these goes to psychotherapy just didn't work. And so, and then it's interesting that you talk about sleep so clearly, because the data also shows that lack of sleep actually causes chronic pain. In other words, people think, well, I'm in chronic pain, I can't sleep. There's a huge study out of Israel that shows that lack of sleep causes chronic pain. And it's not the other way around.
Yeah, I've experienced that directly recently. It's so clear to me, because when I don't sleep, that's when I'm like, okay, my body's not feeling good now. It's very one-to-one cause and effect.
A couple, 3 or 4 things that you used. I mean, people really struggle to get to sleep. And so my feeling is none of the process really works if you can't sleep. And so what were some things that you did? When you talk about sleep hygiene, what does that mean exactly?
For me, it meant trying to wind down, which was quite hard for my mind and still is. At the end of the day, still a work in progress there. Not being on screens, maybe doing a yoga nidra meditation, and just winding down and getting to bed. Which sometimes I need to lean on, it's lean on other things. Like sometimes I, need to lean on medication, or sometimes I need to lean on a guided meditation or writing, or, getting something out in a phone call to someone. But just doing that consistently at the same time and for the same amount of time each night. Life-changing.
So we've talked about 3 things that you've done. Well, first of all, you learned about chronic pain, which is important. Then you talked about the expressive writing, and then we've talked about some meditation exercises, and then sleep. Then the other thing I talk about a lot is, as part of this foundational part of the project, is not discussing your pain or complaining. Did we ever get into that part of the process?
We did, and I hated that suggestion, but it's when you told me that, I really wanted to keep complaining and talking about it, or not even complaining. I just wanted people to know I was hurting, But yeah, we definitely talked about that. Yeah.
And how long did it take you to actually stop doing that?
Oh, I don't know, months.
It's interesting. It seems like it'd be sort of simple, but it's not.
Yeah, it's not. But it clicked at some point. I stopped wanting to also talk about it as I started getting better, because I realized that it was just keeping me in that territory of like, I'm in pain, that mindset. And it's like that whole redirecting thing that you also talk about, or reprogramming. Like if you're talking about your pain, you're not doing other things. You're just living in that story. It's such a story. So shifting out of that means not really talking about it, and doing other things, just one step at a time.
Can you explain to the audience your concept of neuroplasticity, why not discussing the pain is so critical?
So neuroplasticity, I'm not a scientist, but for me, how I experience it and from what I know, it's that there's neural pathways that form patterns in our thinking in our brain that are also connected to our bodies and our physical sensations and how we process physical sensations. And they're connected to stories and memories and triggers and all sorts of things like that. And they just get repeated. Our brains kind of are on the same loops and tell the same stories over and over and over again throughout our lives. And neuroplasticity is basically the ability to kind of groove new neural pathways and start to redirect your brain pathways and your thinking and thought pattern pathways, and therefore also your experience of things like pain and just your ability to kind of think differently and have completely new perspectives than you ever had before.
Can you explain to the audience your new relationship to pain? Because you're not pain-free, but it just doesn't bother you so much.
Yeah, I am not pain-free. I definitely experience pain, but it doesn't. I kind of just don't care anymore, and I think that is a big. I think that's the big shift for me, and I try to tell people that like it's not. I used to have so much, shame, and I was anger, like towards myself too. Like I'm not doing good enough when I'm hurting, and it's actually just being okay with the uncomfortable feelings and not letting that direct your mind or your way of thinking or anything, and just it's just this. It becomes this neutral experience. It just becomes this neutral experience, and it's really not that big of a deal anymore, I guess. There's just no emotional weight to it anymore. I think that's the big change. But yeah, I notice when I, am anxious or stressed out or not getting good sleep, it definitely comes back, definitely. But I don't go into a hole with it anymore.
Right. So yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting. I have arthritis in my hip and knee, and I don't have the anxiety that I had when I had chronic pain. So you're right. You have a different relationship to your pain. So it sort of loses its hold. Well, Dori, thanks for this segment. So what we talked about is some things she actually did to pull herself out of this tailspin. And again, she's a classic person in her 20s, which chronic pain is rampant in people in their 20s and 30s now, actually in their teenage years. It's a big problem. And she used understanding pain, awareness, what's called expressive writing, relaxation, sleep, and then not discussing your pain. And what all these tools do, they give you a foundation to move your brain away from pain into new neurological circuits. So she's done a wonderful job. And we're going to discuss in the next segment is she's now thriving. And remember, the ultimate answer to chronic pain is you move a long ways away from it, like giving back, creativity. All those things are a long ways away from pain pathways. So as you spend your time there, and I think you say it really nice about moving away from your pain or letting go, it's really a paradoxical process of letting go, which is really, in some ways, hard to do. So, Dori, thanks for this segment. Again, Dori is currently launching her art consulting business in the Los Angeles area. You can visit my website at www.backandcontrol.com. We'll continue our discussion on connecting to your own capacity to heal here on the Back and Control radio show with yours truly, Dr. David Hanscom, on the X-Zone Broadcast Network at www.xzbn.net. So again, Dori is a wonderful story of hope. She's young, she's energetic, she's inspiring, and we're here about how her life is looking now. Even though she's getting it set up again, she's ready to thrive. In this edition of the Art and Control radio show, we're discussing moving through anxiety and pain by connecting to your own capacity to heal with Dori Scherer. She's an artist in Los Angeles, and she's just starting her art consulting business. We've talked about her 15, 20 years in pain and anxiety. We've talked about her moving out of pain with expressive writing to relaxation tools. And what I want to emphasize in this segment is that all these exercises that she's doing, the writing, relaxation, sleep, etc., all of these are shown to drop inflammatory markers. So people think that chronic pain is a, quote, psychological issue. It is not. So it's a physiological issue that your body is under constant threat with unpleasant thoughts. There's a separation process and calming down process that effectively calms down this inflammatory response, improves the nerve conduction, and the pain really does drop down dramatically. But the most important part is the anxiety and frustration drop, your creativity comes back, and you start to thrive. So, Dori, I think you're starting to feel this phase of your life. You're starting out new in Los Angeles now, and I think you feel this energy of starting to thrive.
Yeah, I just moved back here, and in the last year or so, it's definitely my creativity has shifted and opened up, and it's just flowing more. I feel more, just connected to the creativity within, and it's a lot of fun. And when I'm taking action towards that stuff, like I'm not in, it's actually when I'm not doing that I start getting anxious, because I think it's a need. I think it's a need, and that all people are really creative, and like, what else is there to do?
Right. Can you tell the audience your latest endeavor, which is sort of brand new for you?
Yeah, well, I think something that came out of the expressive writing is that I started writing poetry. I've been writing a lot more, so that's shifted for me. I'm also a visual artist, and I started working with text, but writing has just been so foundational and has really become a practice. So yeah, I've been writing, essay and poetry. I think I'm working towards self-publishing my first book of poetry, and I'm also, like, I lead kind of group. I lead groups, a monthly community new moon ceremony where I speak on like social and spiritual concepts and kind of critical theory of sorts. And I am also working one-on-one with people to help them on their kind of creative or spiritual path, and through art and writing and tarot and astrology, all the stuff. I lead I do guided meditations, all sorts of stuff like that.
Wow, I had no idea. So, wow, you're on fire. So, and the poetry is new. This is completely new for you, right?
It really is completely new. I never thought I would be writing poetry, so wow. It's pretty fun. It's really, it's very, it just, I don't know, just at its most basic, just feels so human. And I feel like I have more of an understanding through my journey of humanity, and all of the experience of it, and just holding the complexity of the hidden painful crevices and the blissed outness, and just like this strange magic of being a human being. And I want to write about it.
No, I think it's fantastic. And as you know, not that you're necessarily happy you went through it. I mean, you can't do do-overs in life, but when you do go through the intensity of the experiences you went through, and I know it was a very intense experience for you, and it's sort of hard to put it into words, right?
Yeah, it's so, it's really hard to even when I'm talking to people who are new and trying to, recover from really bad chronic pain, I feel like I can't even explain that I was once where they are at as
Right.
well. But I most certainly was. Yeah.
And one of the things that we have found out is that you can't get to where you are by positive thinking. That's a fair statement, right?
Hmm.
And there's sort of a sequence. And I'm just curious what your version of the sequence is that pulled you out of the hole. And I think we talk about awareness, hope, forgiveness, and play. But
Yeah.
the awareness is a pretty big step.
I think the awareness is everything, and that's why the expressive writing and the meditation practice is so important to me, and that's personally how it worked for me. I don't know if how that works for everyone. I also did physical therapy and somatic therapy, which was really, really helpful, and understanding how to process my feelings and be aware of them, and all the different things. But it really was, just the awareness of what, and learning about kind of the science behind it, and lots of talking with you and reading your writing, just becoming aware of how, of what is happening inside, what's happening, what is happening that's causing this, and becoming aware of that. I'm no longer identified with it. So awareness is definitely key. Hmm. I'm
And
forgetting
how do you,
actually your main question. I'm not sure if I answered the question.
that's perfect. I mean, awareness is a big deal. I mean, the key issue is that people talk about, I have to be really careful in this whole process because when I use the word, remember when you're angry and frustrated, your body's full of adrenaline, cortisol, and lots of inflammation. And when you are at play, you're full of dopamine, serotonin, and
Mhm.
anti-inflammatory proteins. And so one of the ultimate answers to chronic pain is play. But people look at me, and I've learned this the hard way. People look at me and go, "Are you kidding me? You're mentioning the word play in the presence of my
Yeah.
suffering?"
Yeah.
They're absolutely right because I'm
Yeah. How
actually
dare you?
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
actually disowning your suffering, right?
Yeah. Um, yeah. And I think it's good to acknowledge. I mean, it's important to acknowledge the suffering, and also be able to hold the possibility or some amount of hope that it doesn't have to be like that, and that there might be a little glimmer of play or a little way to find a pocket of joy or a pocket of that, what you call reprogramming, um, um, a pocket of, moving in the direction that feels, like supportive of life as opposed to destructive of life and stuck in that rut. And and it is a big shift. It's a big shift. It's a lot of letting go, as you always talk about. It's so much letting go, and it's so much letting go of your stories, and just acceptance. I think acceptance.
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting because the emotional pain and physical pain are processed in the same region of the brain. And one reason people don't give up their anger because it protects them from emotional pain. And emotional pain hurts. I mean, it actually hurts badly, emotional pain. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why people don't want to feel it. It's not just some sort of psychological issue. And like, remember, as you know, I'm a fan of psychologists. I don't want to be too negative on psychology here because I think there's lots of psychologists now that understand the neuroscience, the neuroplasticity. And the key word to me is neuroplasticity is your brain's going to develop wherever you place its attention. So the three things, and there's bigger categories in this, but the categories I put into is the play, the spiritual journey, and giving back. And that's a long, long ways away from these pain circuits. And the pain circuits
Yeah,
are always
it feels so far away, right?
right.
Yeah.
Do you feel that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it always felt really far away, and it certainly doesn't anymore. And I mean, I'm in that zone now, so that you talk about, and I think I was willing to sit with all the hard emotional stuff that comes up when you stop telling yourself the stories and hold on to that. Like, I think that's a really important point that you made. Why people cling on to it, why they want to be in that like victim mode, because it's like you have to kind of go through all the stuff that comes up when you let go, which is not fun. So there is kind of a, yeah, there's, I don't know. It's not like a light and easy journey necessarily, where it's just like, oh, I light bulb switch, like, you know, like switch. It's not a switch, but it's like a process of turning the switch on, a process of turning it back on, and then it shuts off, and then you turn it back on. And it still is a process. It's not, there's no like graduating and then all of a sudden everything's hunky dory. It's always a process.
Right.
But just there's like, it's either you're more in those pain stories and they're running the show, or they are sporadic and you're aware of them and they're still there and exist within you, but they're not running your life.
Right. Well, we talked about one of the problems that we've talked about. You want to discuss the concept we've discussed in the past about the anxiety with success?
Yeah, I think, oh man. Yeah, I think there is something to that about, you know, holding on to the story, like the anxiety or anticipation that you need to do something and that you're not far along, but there's some goal that you want to accomplish. But what if you actually accomplish it or really take the action to do it? Then you have to let go of all of that anxiety, anticipation that you're holding on to.
Right.
That's always playing in the back of your mind if you don't do it. So it's like, there's some courage and bravery there. And, it's just so funny. The stories we tell ourselves is just, I think it's important to laugh about it too and find some humor in the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm impressed that you say that, because it's pretty hard to find humor when you're suffering that badly. I mean, it's really a rough road. So, well, this is great. Well, so this segment, we talked to Dori about her, just her journey to thriving. And from my perspective, she doesn't know this yet. We talked about this briefly before the show. So Dori, you know, you've just started your journey, right?
Uh-huh.
And that's the fun part for me, is that once you get the tools in place, the concept is called neuroplasticity. Your brain keeps changing and changing and changing, and you actually can't go back. I mean, once you've changed that filter, the filter your brain keeps changing the direction of that filter. So instead of always being a victim, it's always opportunity and giving back and looking forward. So your brain keeps changing that direction, and even though you have some serious slip-ups, you can't go back. You cannot go back into that hole. You can visit it sometimes rather frequently, but you and Doris, well, actually Doris, one of the people actually that really came home hard. So the next day we're going to talk about something that she's doing when she does visit that hole once in a while. We've talked about that. There's some actually advantages to practicing the tools when you do that. So again, Dori is currently launching her art consulting business in the Los Angeles area. She's looking about giving back, about using art as a healing modality. And again, play is a big one. Art is also another major function that we'll discuss in the next segment. So you can learn some of her approaches by visiting my website at www.backandcontrol.com. And we'll continue our discussion on connecting to your own capacity to heal here on the Back and Control Radio Show with yours truly, Dr. David Hanscom, on the X Zone broadcast at www.xzbn.net. Welcome to the Back and Control Radio Show on the X Zone Broadcast Network, and I'm your host, Dr. David Hanscom. In this edition of Back in Control Radio, we are discussing moving through anxiety and pain by connecting to your own capacity to heal. And our guest is Dori Scherer, who's an artist in Los Angeles. She's 34 years old, and over the last couple of years has had a remarkable experience coming out of over 15 years of chronic pain and anxiety. So we've discussed what it's like being in the hole, some of the paradigm shifts that occurred to allow her to come out of the hole, what she's doing to maintain things. And we've talked about one of the ultimate answers to chronic pain is giving back, the spiritual journey, and play. And Dori, I'm excited because, as you know, from my perspective, I think you're just starting your journey now, in a way. And I'm just curious what the future looks like for you. What are some of your dreams? What do you want to give back? The fun part for me is watching people thrive at a level they never knew was possible because you're not fighting anxiety and frustration all the time. So I'm just curious what some of your thoughts about what you want to do?
Yeah, well, I definitely want to publish my writing. I am also working on a film, a pretty personal kind of experimental documentary film project. I am also in grad school getting an MFA, and I am really, really enjoying doing guided meditations in group settings and having being in kind of community and helping people. I definitely have the giving back bug from this work. It just like feels like a natural step. It's just like kind of, it just feels like a must, honestly. Not even like work, but I definitely want to help people with spiritual tools and creative tools, working one-on-one and in groups with a number of different things that I'm into. Yeah.
So I wasn't aware of the group setting that you were working with. Can you tell us a little bit about that group you're working with?
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's not like a set group where you have to be, sign up and be part of it. It's like a drop in. I've always followed the moon cycle as a kind of foundational spiritual practice, as a way to kind of get out of myself and connect to the sky and planetary energies. And so I bring in, so I get together and lead a new moon ceremony, which is something that has happened in my Jewish tradition for thousands of years, called Rosh Chodesh. But it's also for everyone. And I talk sometimes about the astrological concepts or the correlating tarot concepts. I'm big into being a tarot reader and tarot study and esoteric study. And I also talk about just like current issues about human rights and other things that I'm interested in that I feel like are important and relate to, people's individual healing. So yeah, I like getting heady and kind of being intellectual, but then bringing it into a grounded way that's actually like practical and supportive. Wow. And fun.
You're on fire.
Yeah, it's really fun. I'm really enjoying it. It started just a few months ago. So right when I got here to LA. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you really combine.
It's very LA of me.
Well, I mean, you really combine all three concepts about, giving back, the spiritual journey, and play really all at the same time. And I actually think they're all the same thing. I think that play is a mindset. The spiritual journey you can define any way you want, but it's mostly getting perspective back. And, we don't have time in this show to talk about anger and forgiveness, which we've talked about a lot. But, I mean, if you think about where you're at right now compared to 5 years ago, it's a pretty big difference. You were not thinking these thoughts 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's true. I've definitely, for lack of a better word, confidence, but I don't even know if it is confidence, but I just feel more alive.
Well, you sound alive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am definitely, living in, like, being in such excruciating pain, it's such a hindrance to life and to living and to being present. Yeah. And to being really having any kind of, feeling that you're living your authentic self and that you're living the life that you want to be living. I mean, there's a lot of suffering, I think, in that feeling that you're not living really up to your potential. You sense that there's so much more to you that's not being expressed.
Well, you're also expressing something that I was in pain, as you know, for 15 years. And when you come out of it, you do feel so thankful to be out of that hole that I don't want to use the word compelled to give back, but you feel honored and privileged to give back. And you really have a huge empathy with people suffering at that level.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes.
It's not a small impulse to do this. I mean, the suffering is so severe, and of course, it's so long and so endless. It's hard to describe. So, no, you're sort of on fire. Could you discuss with us for a second about your art? I mean, I think that we've talked about this also, that I think art is a major factor in healing, and you are considering starting sort of an art consulting type business or teaching people to use art as a healing modality.
Yeah, or just to do it. I mean, it's really just the action of doing it. I think it's just so important. It's like, I can definitely think of it as like it's therapy. Like whenever I go into the studio, I'm like, oh my gosh, I needed that. I feel so much better. And so in that way, yes, it's absolutely healing and important. It's also just doing something that brings me joy and is like a gift that I have, and it's just a way that I think. I'm a very visual person, and I love art. I study it, and when I get into the studio and I'm making, whether it's working in Illustrator on my computer and designing prints and making kind of text work or sculpture or painting, or working on a performance. I've done so many different, I'm very interdisciplinary, and I just enjoy being in that zone. It's like that creative zone where you're in the flow. I mean, I don't think anything beats that. I don't think anything beats that. Yeah.
Are you planning on, you said that you are starting to teach people or hold classes for people for art?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I am. I absolutely am. And I don't have like the pitch copy or anything right now, but yeah, I'm beginning to develop offerings around working one-on-one and also in group settings, in a number of different ways with drawing and painting and just like kind of creative thinking and ways to take action that is definitely towards the play. Because it's fun. It's really fun, and I think it like lights me up, and I know it lights people up, and it's hard to make time and space for stuff that's fun. And I think it's like more important than ever to claim joy, especially right now during this pandemic. It's like feels like of utmost importance to find pockets of joy and in community together, with other people, and not be so isolated too. And it, I think, is very important as well.
Are you able to do some of this online, some of the teaching, or is it mostly in person right now?
Oh yeah, it's all on Zoom. Yeah.
Oh, it is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So maybe I can like somehow give my info or post it on your, when you're posting this podcast, maybe we can get my info up on there so people can get a hold of me. If they're interested.
Is your website active right now or not so much yet?
I have my art website is, there's something kind of down about it, but you can go to my website. It's DoriScherer.com. For some art. It's definitely not updated, and there's something really funky going on with it right now that I need to fix. But my email address is on there, so there's that.
Okay. Yeah, no, if people want to access your talents and your perspective, why just get a hold of either the X Zone Broadcast Network or my website at backincontrol.com. And
Or email me.
Dori, but also, yeah, or email her. What's your email, Dori? Are you comfortable giving that?
It's O as in Oscar, H as in Harry, DORI @gmail.com.
Okay. Can you say that one more time for us?
OHDORI @gmail.com. Oh, Dori.
Oh, Dori. Got it. Great. No, I like it a lot. And I'm suspect over the next few years why you'll be integrating a lot of what you've learned into your art. And we do workshops, my wife and I and stepdaughter do workshops back in Omega. And we do performing arts, we do some visual arts, and it just calms people down. It's a fantastic way to reroute your neurological circuits into different circuits, into the play pathways and getting your perspective back. Dori, I know we've only covered a fraction of what you really have to say. I always try to.
I know. I could talk for like 100 hours about this stuff.
I know. So. No, we've covered a lot of high points. Are there any just general messages you want to pass on to the audience today?
Oh, wow. I guess I just want to say that I really relate to everyone's pain journey, and that it's really possible to feel much better. I mean, it's possible. And yeah, do what David says. Do the work.
You're not my wife.
Show up.
You must not be my wife. So, yeah, I'm always fascinated when people actually listen to me. No, for me personally, I mean, you'll see, you're already helping some people out. And I can tell you from my perspective, it's rather humbling to see people get so much better when they've been so miserable. And it's just sort of a humbling experience, sort of honor to be part of it. It's a privilege. And it gives you a different perspective. It's just hard to describe and put into words. But yeah, the suffering's severe, and when people get back their hope and actually thrive, it's just an incredibly rewarding experience. So that's why I'm excited about you, because I know you and I have talked about eventually maybe doing some coaching with my project, doing your own coaching down there, using art as a medium.
Which would be so much fun.
And I wasn't aware you had some other talents with the tarot cards and other.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I'm very into tarot and astrology and esoteric study. It's part of my spiritual practice, for sure.
Right. And what's interesting in medicine, we tend to take these different things that you discuss, and particularly me being a spine surgeon, I'm going, oh, whatever. I mean, you're going, well, something is out there. But it turns out that the essence of chronic disease, both physical and mental, is inflammation. And what you're doing, you're learning to auto-regulate and control your nervous system and control your inflammatory response. And when you learn to use those tools at your choice, life changes dramatically because you really do have control of your life. And so, it's fantastic. So we've heard a remarkable story of hope and healing and excellent suggestions and insights from a young and talented artist, Dori Scherer. And we talked about her journey out of pain, some of the paradigm shifts, some of the tools. And again, the reason why this show exists is to say, for those of you suffering chronic pain, not only is there hope, there is a lot of hope. So I'd like to again thank Dori Scherer and all of you listening to our show. For more information on the Back in Control radio show, visit www.backincontrolradiotv.com. You can listen to past episodes and all the important links that will allow you to get back in control. So you have been listening to the Back in Control radio show with Dr. David Hanscom on the X Zone Broadcast Network at www.xzbn.net. So until next week, take care. Remember, you can always be back in control. And Dori, again, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, David, for everything.